Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by asking you to check your pulse.
Oh, a medical start today.
Right. Well, not literally, culturally,
Uh,
because, we are totally living in the era of the sprint. It's all about the hustle.
oh, absolutely. Velocity is basically mistaken for value now.
Exactly. You hack your morning routine, you get 10% more efficient, you optimize those quarterly returns, and if you aren't moving fast, you're basically dying.
That is the prevailing narrative, yeah.
But today, we are pulling the emergency brake on that entire philosophy.
Thank goodness.
Right. We are looking at a stack of research that suggests there is a completely different way to operate, a personality architecture that fundamentally refuses to be rushed.
It's such a fascinating profile because it challenges all those metrics we usually use to define success. I mean, if the modern world is a sprint, the profile we're discussing today is deep sea diving.
Deep sea diving, I like that.
They're just playing a completely different game.
So we are diving into the Max Energy ME80 personality assessment system, specifically focusing on a profile known as the SWWU.
Also known as the heart-focused idealist.
Yes, the heart-focused idealist. And let me tell you, when I was reading through this report, it felt like reading a description of that one friend we all have.
A quiet one.
The quiet one, maybe a bit mysterious, but they have this incredible, unshakable faith in what they're doing, even if it takes them like 10 years to see a payoff.
Yeah, that's them to a T. And our mission today is to break down the internal wiring of this SWWU type, from their energy matrix to their career superpowers.
So we can help you understand either yourself or the idealists in your own life.
Exactly.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the letters, the SWWU, let's zoom out a bit. We need to set the stage with the system itself.
The Max Energy ME80.
Right, because this isn't your standard, are you an introvert or an extrovert kind of quiz, is it?
No, it's quite a bit more dynamic than that. The core philosophy of the ME80 isn't just about sticking a label on your traits. It's about analyzing energy flow.
Energy flow.
Think of it as mapping the electrical grid of a human being.
Okay.
Like, where does the energy come from? How is it processed? And most importantly, where is it directed?
So if we look at the grid for our subject today, the SWWU heart-focused idealist, what's the headline? What is their core identity?
The report gives us this beautiful core declaration for the type. It says, holds desires close to the heart, allowing the future to grow from faith.
Allowing the future to grow from faith. I mean, that sounds almost poetic.
It does.
But in a business context, growing from faith sounds, well, it sounds really risky.
Oh, it is risky, and that's the tension we need to explore here. Most profiles, and honestly, most businesses, operate on ROI.
Return on investment.
Right. The logic is transactional. I input X effort. I get Y result in 30 days.
The sprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The SWWU does not have that circuit.
So how do they decide to do anything if they aren't calculating the payout?
They don't calculate efficiency. They confirm value.
Confirm value. What does that mean in practice?
It means the first step in their internal logic isn't, will this work? It's, is this what I truly want to protect?
Wow.
They operate on a deep heart wish. Action for them is a response to intention, not an exchange for an external reward.
So if the intention is there, the timeline just becomes irrelevant.
Precisely. If their faith in the value is confirmed, they will invest continuously. They use time and accumulation to pave the road.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think of it like the difference between a day trader looking for a quick flip and a gardener planting an oak tree.
Right, the gardener isn't out there checking the height of the sapling every single hour.
No. They have faith in the biological process of growth.
I really love that image. But let's talk mechanics. The report mentions a control mechanism regarding their energy, and it uses a phrase I found super interesting, extremely high inward centripetal force.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that for us?
So imagine a spinning top or a planet with really strong gravity. That is centripetal force. It's energy pulling everything toward the center.
Okay.
The SWWU is characterized by this global view of control. They do not pursue external rapid eruptions.
So you won't see them exploding with outward energy or flashy displays.
Rarely. They aren't scattering their resources everywhere. They invest all their cognitive resources into maintaining that inner core value.
So they definitely aren't the loudest voice in the room.
Almost never. It's about density and depth for them, not surface area. They are protecting that flame inside.
Okay, let's pop the hood on this. The ME80 system breaks this down into an energy matrix with 4 specific layers: IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation.
This is the blueprint.
Right. I want to walk through these because this is where we see how the machine actually runs. Let's start with the bottom layer, The IP, or inner value layer.
So the IP layer is essentially the engine of the car. And for the SWWU, this is defined as stable accumulation activation.
Stable accumulation.
Yeah. Think of it like a heavy flywheel.
Hard to push at first.
Exactly. It takes a lot to get it moving. But once it's moving, it has immense momentum. It runs on consistency.
So it's not a sprinter's twitch muscle.
No, it's an endurance muscle. This layer dictates that their core energy comes from gathering, saving, and deepening their understanding over time.
Great.
They don't just get an idea, they marinate in it.
Marinate. Okay, so that's the engine. Next is the IQ layer, the emotional activation layer. Now, usually when we hear IQ, we think logic, math, solving puzzles.
Right, the standard definition.
But here, it's linked to risk and consequence judgment. How does that work for an idealist?
This is their braking system, or their filter. Before they act, the SWWU evaluates the cost. But not just the financial cost.
And they're evaluating the cost to their values.
Yes. If I engage in this, will it compromise who I am? Will it drain my core? This layer is constantly scanning for risks that might threaten that inner flame we talked about.
So they aren't reckless dreamers. They are actually quite careful.
Extremely careful. That's why they don't rush. They're essentially running a risk analysis on their own soul.
A risk analysis on their soul. That's intense. Which leads us to the EQ layer, the decision calculation layer, defined here as emotional perception and resonance.
This is the steering wheel. When it comes time to actually make a decision, left or right, yes or no, they don't use a spreadsheet.
What do they use?
A tuning fork.
The tuning fork.
They need to feel a resonance. Does this decision vibrate at the same frequency as my heart wish?
So even if the numbers on the spreadsheet make total sense, if the feeling is off, the SWWU will likely just say no.
They will walk away.
It's gut feeling, but aimed at long-term alignment.
Exactly. And finally, we have the manifestation layer. This is what the world actually sees. And for the SWWU, the output is described as energy operates inward, carrying, absorbing, integrating.
Which goes right back to that centripetal force idea. They're like a sponge rather than a fire hose.
Yes. They absorb information, they carry the emotions of others, and they integrate really complex ideas internally. They are processing deeply, even if they just look like they're sitting quietly in a meeting.
So we have this system. Stable accumulation, risk assessment based on values, decision-making via resonance, and an inward absorbing presentation.
That's the matrix.
That brings us to their inner traits. The report calls them faith-driven, which we touched on, but there's a specific detail here that just blew my mind.
The visualization.
Yes, the visualization aspect.
It is fascinating. The report notes that the SWWU has an incredibly rich inner world. They don't just hope for the future. They repeatedly imagine wish fulfillment scenes.
Like they're playing a movie in their head.
Literally.
Yeah.
They visualize the end goal. The book being published, the school being built, the family being happy, and they replay this scene to support their current progress.
It's their fuel source.
When reality is tough, they retreat into the cinema of the mind to remind themselves why they are suffering through the hard work today.
That is such a powerful resilience mechanism.
It really is. When they face difficulties, they don't look around for external applause. They don't need a boss to pat them on the back and say, "Good job," nearly as much as they need to ask themselves, is this still what I truly want?
And if the answer is yes.
They can endure almost anything.
But, and there's always a but on the deep dive.
Always.
This intense internal focus has to have a downside. The report talks about a shadow blind spot. What is the trap for the heart-focused idealist?
The trap is something called ideal projection.
Ideal projection sounds very clinical.
It describes a fallacy. The belief that my willingness means reality must cooperate.
Oof. Like, I want it so bad, the universe has to give it to me.
Correct. Because their heart wish runs so deep, they can very easily underestimate reality.
They underestimate market conditions.
Or the free will of other people. Or physical limitations. They assume that because they are willing to suffer and wait, the result must happen.
And when it doesn't.
The report describes it as a slow loss. Since they don't expect quick returns anyway, they don't notice when things are actually failing until it's way too late.
They tend to endure dissatisfaction rather than making timely adjustments.
That's the danger of the endurance muscle. You end up enduring things you should actually just quit.
And withdrawal is incredibly difficult for them, I imagine, because they've invested so much faith.
Exactly. And because their actions start slowly, they often miss critical windows of opportunity. While they were feeling around for resonance, the market just moved on.
Wow. And I imagine all this emotional turmoil, this slow loss, is happening entirely inside.
Mostly, yes. The report notes that their emotion fluctuates heavily with their expectations, but it rarely shows externally.
So they could be absolutely heartbroken or panicked, and you might just see them looking a little thoughtful.
Which is a dangerous place to be.
It is. So let's pivot to how this plays out with other people. Social relationships. If they are these inward-absorbing sponges with rich inner worlds, are they just loners?
Not exactly. They prefer one-on-one or small circle deep talk. They definitely aren't the life of the party, but they're often the soul of the conversation.
The soul of the conversation.
Because their superpower in social settings is memory.
Memory. Like remembering birthdays?
Deeper than that. Not facts and figures, but people. The report says they remember things people said and wishes not yet completed.
Oh, wow. Like, hey, 3 years ago you mentioned you really wanted to learn to paint. Did you ever do that?
Exactly that. And imagine how that makes someone feel. Incredibly seen.
Yeah.
Seriously treated. It builds massive trust.
I can see that. But there's a flip side, isn't there?
There is. Some people worry the SWWU carries simple things too heavily. The report calls it a fine tenderness.
Fine tenderness.
But they might remember a casual comment you made at a party and hold on to it as this solemn vow, which can feel a bit intense for more casual personality types.
Right. I just said I liked your scarf. I didn't mean we were blood brothers now.
Something like that.
Okay, so that's the social side. Let's talk business. We've established they aren't day traders. Where do they shine in the professional world?
Their core business advantage is defined as long-term cultivation power.
The marathon runners of the business world.
They excel at decomposing abstract ideals into sustainable paths. If you have a visionary goal that seems downright impossible, the SWWU is the person who can settle in and quietly build the road to get there, stone by stone.
And what about leadership? Can they lead?
Beautifully. They are the hope regatherers.
Hope regatherers. I love that.
In low periods, when the team is burnt out and the metrics look terrible, the SWWU doesn't yell. They don't panic. They remind the team of the original intention. They use their patience to regather hope, making the work feel meaningful again, not just like a checklist of tasks.
That is a vital role, especially in startups or long research projects where the payoff is years away. So based on this, what are the recommended career fields for our heart-focused idealists?
The report lists 4 key areas where they really thrive. First is long-term projects and brand cultivation, taking a brand from 0 to 1 and really settling its value over years.
Makes sense. Authentic branding takes a lot of time.
Second is education, guidance, and companionship, witnessing individual growth over time.
So teachers, counselors, mentors, roles where you plant seeds and wait for them to grow.
Exactly. Third is belief-driven organizations and public benefit.
Nonprofits, NGOs.
Places where faith in the cause is the primary currency, not just quarterly profit. And finally, patience-required roles.
Like what?
Things like R&D, curation, or long-term cultural research.
It's really about finding a place where fast isn't the only metric for good.
Precisely. If you put an SWWU on a high-frequency, high-pressure sales floor, you will break them. But if you put them in a Heritage Museum curation role or have them lead a 5-year development plan, they will absolutely thrive.
This has been such an interesting look at a type that often just flies under the radar. It really challenges that hustle culture mindset we started the conversation with.
It really does. And I actually want to leave our listeners with a golden sentence from the conclusion of the report, because I think it sums this up perfectly.
Let's hear it.
It says, SWWU heart-focused idealists' value lies not in rapid eruption, but continuous growth. When heart wish is cherished, this patience and sincerity transforms into stable and long-lasting force, accompanying others and accomplishing self.
Accomplishing self. I really like that. It's not just about helping others. It's about becoming who you are meant to be, just slowly.
It's a great reminder that speed is not the only measure of power. Stability is power, too.
So, to all our SWW listeners out there, stop looking at your watch. Trust your resonance. You're building something that's meant to last.
And for those of us who live with or work with an idealist, give them the time. The fruit they are growing is worth the wait.
Absolutely. Now, before we sign off, we need to give credit where it is due. This deep dive was based on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It's a truly fascinating system.
It is. And if you want to learn more about your own energy matrix or the ME80 system in general, you can visit their official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
You can also search for them on Facebook. You can look up Max Energy AMI or Met Energy Psi to find their community and resources.
Highly recommend it if you want to understand the deep why behind your actions.
And it leaves me thinking, in a world that demands instant results, are we actually starving ourselves of the greatest innovations simply because we aren't giving the idealists enough time to build them?
That is a question worth taking some time to think about.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Remember, whether you're a sprinter or a marathon runner, know your pace and own it. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care, everyone.